even though it says it is, there we go.
We should
All
have
right, you guys.
7, shouldn't we? Have we lost anybody?
Let's take a look at the agenda. I have a
Well,
chair.
we should have one.
Kevin, Tracy, Joan, David, Gina, and Kim. Oh, and Lucille. Sorry. So yes, you need one more. All right, you have 7:01. So whenever you get that 4th member, you'll be good to go.
Okay. Live.
Yep, you're live on YouTube for everybody to see.
Kevin, can you give us a little drum roll?
As I said, if I touch those things, my daughter would be up here in a heartbeat. What are you doing with my drum set?
My daughter's a percussionist too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, she had her lessons earlier today.
Cool.
Yep. All right. Well, I guess we're still waiting on.
We're still waiting on a quorum.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
So Kim, it's a good year for the gardens, huh? Good harvesting.
Yeah, and it looks beautiful out there, and so far we're keeping most of the pests out, we think, with a fence, and yeah.
Quite a chipmunk year though. Oh my God.
Yes, people said that from the beginning, and I think they may have gotten in at times. Yeah. Yeah. So have you been over to the community garden?
No, I have a plot at college camp and my backyard, so that keeps me busy.
Yeah. Well, everybody's invited to visit. I mean, just
Great.
Go on over and read the signs.
Help pick weeds.
It's experience made signs proliferate a little bit. Like if you didn't grow it, don't take it, which you wouldn't think you would need, but we had some foragers last year who thought that it was literally a garden to come and say, hey, can you hand me a tomato?
Yeah.
So
maybe someday.
Yeah, I mean that could be a different purpose.
Yep.
It's not where people are in their heads at this point. So.
But that would definitely be something that would be interesting to have a true kind of community garden where people could. I mean, all that food security kind of things that I think we've all been aware of, and I think we even talked about it before. Yeah, I don't know quite what to do here.
I did see that in Germany with nut trees. It was still quite the tradition to pick nuts.
Yeah, I seem to remember you were bringing that up back in March, I believe.
Bring the nuts back to Oneonta.
That's right. That's right. Some might argue they never left, but okay. Well, I don't see any emails from. Oh, somebody's coming in. Oh, here we go. There's Hutch. All right. Okay.
Can anybody hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, hey, Dave.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
All right. All right.
Okay. Well, we now have a quorum, so we can go ahead. Dave, because you just came in, we are recording as usual.
Okay.
Including video, so that's different. And we are live on the internet on a YouTube channel. So just so you know, Mark, when you've done these before, do we know if anybody in the community is talking, or is this just kind of
It was Carrie.
I told you, it's kind of like a creepy thing. I hover in the background. I can tell immediately if someone is watching and if someone makes any commentary on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
But in general, you won't know until I bring it to your attention unless you have it up in the background.
Oh,
But if you bring it up on the background, please let me know because that does impact the numbers so I know if anybody's out there.
oh, okay. Well, I will just stay away from that then.
As of right now, you do have one viewer though, so.
All right. Hello. Okay, so let's go ahead and call this to order. We now have a quorum. So I tried to do the best that I could on the minutes from March 10th. My notes got a little bit confused with the sudden departure from campus. So that's where I tried. I think I got everything correct. So does anybody have any comments, corrections?
Yeah, I wasn't able to be there, so I can't correct.
Yeah, actually,
I can't either.
you can.
Or vote.
They look good to me.
Look at you. Okay. All right. Well, since I hear no comments or corrections, we'll let them stand. So all of those in favor of the approving the minutes of March 10th, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, Dave, you weren't there.
I know, but that's all right. No. You had to have a full quorum vote, didn't you?
And who all is going to abstain? All right. And one abstention. And by process of elimination, then nobody is going to say no. Okay. So we can move on then with the agenda. So the minutes have been approved. I guess I should have asked for it to be put on the floor, but this is
Motions will not be approved if you don't have a full quorum vote at tonight's meeting. So you don't have enough to pass it. You have to have a full 4 in the affirmative. An abstention counts in the no category. So they'll have to be moved to your next meeting's agenda for approval.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
Carrie,
Sorry.
if more people join us, can we go back and vote again?
You certainly can, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I will put that back on. Needs to go on to our next meeting. Interesting. Learn something new all the time. Okay. I don't. We don't have any petitioners, as far as I know. Carrie, is that correct?
That is correct. No comments were received for tonight's meeting.
Okay. I got no correspondence directly to this for this meeting. Anybody else?
No.
No. Okay. Council Member Davies, you're up.
Well, as you can imagine, since the March 10th meeting, the last meeting of the Environmental Board, Council has been very busy responding to COVID and its impact on the city with regards to operations, with regards to budget, and all the moving parts there. So anything directly linked to the environment has been kind of pushed a little bit to the background, with one exception. So Council, gosh, I can't even tell you when the date was. This was before I was in council, became a climate smart community. And the mayor has asked Greg Mattice to convene a group of folks, and the mayor selected the folks that would be part of the climate smart community task force committee. Not sure what the exact description. And so that group consists of myself as a representative of council, Kevin as a representative of the Environmental Board and chair of the Environmental Board, Danny Lappin, who in his role in the city with planning, as well as his role as Otsego County representative and his professional role with OCCA was selected, and Stephen Yearley, who is the Oneonta Code Enforcement Officer. I think I have everyone, Kevin, is that correct?
That is everybody that I recall being on there.
Right. So that committee has been formed and will hopefully be meeting sometime soon to begin taking a close, hard look at the climate smart community program, as well as actions that can be taken, and among a number of different things. So we have yet to kind of create the agenda for this group, but I think the only reason it's been delayed is because, again, going back to that first statement, is COVID response throughout the city has been, that's been the focus. And so it's been really difficult to be able to add other things at this particular time. So that's the only thing I have to report.
May I throw a quick comment out, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Trace.
Go right ahead.
No, I would just suggest that one of the items, especially since Steve Yearley is on, the code enforcement man, that maybe you want to think about rental properties and lack of insulation, perhaps in many rental properties. I know two or three previous code enforcement officers back, Peter Friedman mentioned way back in the dark ages that he felt people that rent and charge the students for the heat bill are not very interested in keeping the heat bill down because they're not paying for it. So it's just something to throw out there, and just, I
Right.
think.
So, no, that's a good point. My understanding is that this task force kind of got convened when Mark and I asked about basically creating a task force on green building codes. If you remember, we had a many conversations back in the fall and the winter in the environmental board. And the mayor said that, yes, that would be folded in with this climate smart community task force. And Mark and I made it very well known that that was what we wanted to have be part of that task force. But yes, so considering the fact that many of the renovations and other properties that are, since there's not a lot of new building going on, then the rentals would be certainly a place that we would be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. So, anything else on that? You, Mark, that was about it, right?
Yeah, that's it. That covers pretty much the only thing that would be of interest in terms of environmental actions to this group.
Okay.
Unless
Tracy,
there's other
welcome.
questions.
Okay. So now, sorry, I got kind of like bounced back and forth here between screens. Okay, so then we're on to our committees. So, Kim, here's Lucille, I assume. Kim, do you have anything to say about community gardens?
I think you're muted, Kim.
I haven't been to a meeting since February, and obviously a lot has happened since then. But I would say, just to sum up, that all the terms of the grant were fulfilled as much as possible. The city worked incredibly hard in the midst of the pandemic to make this happen. They were incredibly supportive of making it go forward. It's entirely rented. And we did, I think it is. The one downside was that the accessible boxes were a very hard sell during a time when vulnerable people, probably not very, I don't know, a lot of people in congregate housing may not even have had the freedom to go out. And so in June, we asked the city what we should do about them because we didn't want to leave them empty. And they said, do whatever you want this year. We'll go back to the intended purpose next year, with the assumption everything will be normal next year. And so I think those have been all rented out. They actually have all been filled anyway. So the whole garden looks filled. And I think people are being pretty respectful of social distancing and masks as needed. And I invite everybody to come on down. I actually retired from the steering committee after this was done because I thought done is beautiful. Great. And I need to move on to some other things. So I am still gardening there, so I can probably give you some reports, but I will be less in the know.
Okay. Yeah, so you're not seeing any, if I remember correctly, was it last year, the season before or 2 seasons ago, where there had been people that bought the plots and then sort of let them go fallow, if you will, or not taking care of them? Has there been?
It's been good.
Good upkeep.
Yeah, very good upkeep. At the last final plots, we had to kind of encourage somebody to come and get going with it. Now, getting it planted, but there were some issues with that plot. but last year, yeah, even when a couple people didn't follow through, they were very good about relinquishing the plot, and we re-rented them. So not having fallow plots will make a great deal of difference. The bugs seem better this year for whatever reason, but maybe because we just don't have a lot of standing hay. So that's been working out well. I mean, we were, one of the things I think about is the Sustainability Task Force report talked about replicating the success of the community garden. Well, at the time, as I said, there wasn't a huge amount currently, but now I think it is possible to replicate it. The student who is starting a garden with Fox Hospital, apparently there have been some problems. We did offer help. One of the people from the steering committee went over and talked to her about some things, or talked on the phone or whatever. And but I think that was a slow start, and so it is possible that can be, gardeners from community garden can have a supportive role. I don't know if the student is going to be around next year, because she may be a senior. She may have been a graduating senior. So it remains to be seen, but there's good prospect for replicating it, not on city land, but on private land,
Okay.
which would be great. And it's a different area of the city. It's on 5th Street.
Excellent. Excellent. That sounds really good. Okay. Mark, Oneonta 2030. I guess that has been mostly talking about, or Joan. Hey, there's Joan. Joan can talk about Oneonta 2030 either, too.
You move.
Basically, how is the Mark? Any progress on the composting?
So we discussed that a little bit at the March 10th meeting. Frankly, since that time, I have not received an update, but I will follow up on that and let you all know at the next meeting.
Okay. I figured that things had gotten thrown for quite the loop.
Yes.
All right. So what do we want to do about urban forest?
Well, I guess I had not even checked to see if we have any budget money coming up. I did make a query earlier in the year and didn't get a response. So I personally don't think we're going to be doing much this year. One comment I would make is that Fred announced that he will go through this coming year, but he plans to probably not want to be doing upper tree kinds of things the year after this. But so I would encourage our board to make sure that somehow or other there's money aside. It probably won't be a separate line. Fred is not a separate line. He just does it on a basis of pay-as-you-go basis, sort of. At least we've got to make sure there's money in there. And Greg Matthijs is fully aware of this. But I just think pressure from this board will not hurt, and reminding the mayor once in a while that, the trees we planted have grown and they're getting, if you don't trim them, they hang out over the sidewalk, over the streets, et cetera, et cetera. So we definitely are at a point where we do need someone in that capacity. So, other than that, I can't think of anything. I haven't checked yet, but I believe we should have 10 elm trees, at least 10, coming in next year. And I have not checked with the bursar's office to see if, I think those were paid for. When George was here, he said he was going to order them, and I'm not sure if that ever happened. But the idea is you buy them 3 or 4 years ahead, and then you get them, in the future. And I believe that year might be coming up next year that we would get them.
Okay.
Much else, yeah. Yeah.
All right, Mark, were you trying to say you wanted to jump in?
Thanks, Kevin. So here's what I'd recommend. Right now, we've been going through a process of really looking for areas we can save money in the budget, since we are going to clearly have some deficits without tax money coming in the way that we've gotten it in the past years. That said, that the council is starting to discuss budgets. Yep. At the end of this July, and it's early discussions. It's going to be kind of, what are we looking for? What are our goals? These types of things. But as the fall begins to progress, or August and September move along, we're going to start getting into specifics in terms of wish lists and things like this. what I would suggest that if this board is interested in trying to make an argument for some level of new trees, as well as support for an arborist, but you said, well, Fred, for next year, please put together that and send that to me, and I can then bring that forward in some of our meetings as we move forward and let them know that this is of interest to the environmental board.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Dave, if you want to help us kind of put together a sort of, since you've been on top of this for so long, if you want to kind of put together a wish list or what you think might be needed going forward, and maybe how many hours that we would need to have somebody maintaining, just a rough estimate at least, and then.
Yeah, well, Fred, I don't know how many hours he's been doing. I mean, he on his own got to be certified as an urban forester. He had to pay money to do that and take a test. But he also was a forester. I think, I forgot, it was Paul Smith's or Syracuse that he went through the forest. So he is a bona fide forester, but the urban forester is something else, But he on his own. I don't know. Brett seemed to think there was somebody on the maintenance staff already that it might be appropriate, because that other individual, I don't know his name, did work with one of the cutting agencies in town. And so Fred has tried to initiate some sort of cooperation between him and the town, the city, Parks and Rec thing, and it just hasn't happened yet. So I'll try to keep on top of it, definitely. But you should be aware that Fred's done a great job, and he may not want to work. He may want to work in smaller capacity. I don't think he wants to be climbing trees. He's 70 now. So I think he's reached a point where he doesn't want to go up there and do that stuff anymore.
That makes sense. All right,
Yeah.
Excellent. So we'll start keeping these things in mind, and we'll forward those along to Mark to put those into the.
Good, yeah, and I'll try to get something to you soon. Bug me if you don't.
Okay.
48 hours.
I was going to say, somebody bug me because I'm going to forget.
Good
All
question.
right. So, Lucille, you're there. Or did you have a question? Or
Yeah, quick question. So these elm that are coming, I assume that these are
Resistant.
resistant to the Dutch elm disease, GMO,
It's
whatever.
from an outfit in New Hampshire. We have 3 from that outfit already on Ford Avenue. If you go past the YMCA building there and the White House in the corner of Ford, it would be the south east corner, Ford and Walnut. There are 2 there that came from the same outfit, and they're doing well. If you go down another block and hang a left on Elm Street, there's one directly across in the parking lot of the Catholic Church. So if you were driving out of the Catholic Church,
okay, yeah.
Okay.
so there are 3, they all 3 came at once. But to my knowledge, those are the only elms that I think we have in the city.
Well, as long as we don't plant them all in a row, it should be okay, right?
Yeah, that's true. I was thinking, I've got my eye on some of the stuff on Spruce Street as Walnut tees into Spruce. There are 2 or 3 houses there, and I've been trying to negotiate with the owners, et cetera, but they're barren and they need good trees in there. So I was thinking maybe, well, yeah, probably you don't want to put all 3 of the elms together, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what happened in my hometown. Now we have no trees, and we're in.
Well, but that was all over the place. Yeah.
All right. Excellent.
Dave, are you going to put any on Elm Street? Is that in the
Yeah.
There was the one on Elm Street. Yeah.
We
Yeah,
put
there's no
one on
print.
elm. Yeah, I don't know if there are any, I mean, I'm at a point now where I'm looking for large spaces to put large trees. We did put a lot of these smaller trees that we had to restrict the height because of wires, et cetera, et cetera. So my personal feeling is let's get them on private property where we have the room to let them grow like they did in the good old days, and they're all coming down now.
Hey, if you're willing to put them in the backyard,
Joan, I would love to see the realtors, Joan, if you're going to get the realtors to do this kind of thing, to make some,
buy a house and get a tree.
to have a tree. A house gets a free tree from the city. It wouldn't, the city wouldn't be out more than $100 a shot or something like that, or less. If the owner, the new owner, would seem excited about getting a new tree, that would be a win-win.
Hey, I'm in the market for some trees myself, so
I will talk to the board tomorrow,
All right, throw it
the
out.
Board of Realtors. I think
Good.
that's a great
And
idea.
this is, totally off the top of my head. It's nothing that we've gone through the city with, but, the trees we buy are coming out of the budget. Many of them go in the medians, And many of them, some of them go into the private, but a lot of private people do not want them.
Right.
And Dave, we can actually plant trees in people's private land, not on easements. I mean, it's city, a city.
Yeah, when Dick Miller came on board, but prior to that, the city attorney said, whatever you do, don't put a tree on private property. It's like
That's what I thought, yeah.
money. Dick Miller came on board and said, why not? He said, and so David Mercy wrote up a little legal thing that for 2 years, they're supposed to protect the tree and water it, et cetera. And after that, the city is absolutely done with the tree. The city does not want to be in the position of coming around 50 years in the future and city tree, So no, the little thing they sign, and it's in the business office that they signed it. I mean, it's kind of worthless, but anyhow, it seems to. David.
All right. Lucille, do you have anything about community plantings? You're muted, by the way, and I cannot unmute you.
Oh.
Maybe Carrie can unmute you?
I can. Usually I like to be able to see that they want to be, so with her camera off, but I'll go ahead and do it and we'll see how it goes.
Hello,
Lucille, go ahead.
Oh, Lucille, or is Lucille on board? I'm sorry.
Well, her L is here. Lucille?
Speak up.
All right. We will then forgo that for now. That's fine.
I've remuted her connection.
Okay. We can come back if we think that we have that. All right, so the community engagement, same kind of problem that everybody else has been having, with the exception of the community gardens, which is the one thing that's going like gangbusters. So in the pandemic. So good job, Kim. We did have a meeting with Jody. There was some. Mark was there, myself, Danny, and I think that was the only community members that were there that were looking at some beginning planning of what some property things looking like that. It was such in the beginning process. There's not a whole lot that I can think of that's worth mentioning. Mark, did you have anything? Just that it was moving forward. And now I haven't heard back from them in quite some time. So,
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add was that that was of interest to this group, and I think we kind of pushed for it, was the idea that there'd be kind of walking paths and think connections between the eastern part of the city and the area kind of down on the west end. And I was really pleased to see that was part of it. And I thought, interestingly, so they're kind of winding. It wasn't just like a straight sidewalk right down the road. So I was pleased about that. But yeah, beyond, and that seems to be a feature that everyone is looking for. Beyond that, there was more of a discussion about ideas rather than here's a set of plans. Certainly not to that particular idea or that point yet. It's mostly, what do we want to see in this particular site and how might it look?
I mean, the engineers they'd come out and seen the land. They didn't do any surveying. They just kind of took an eye at it, looked at the maps, and started throwing down some ideas. But it was just so much in the preliminary stages. But it was nice to see that, as Mark said, that even from the very beginning, walking paths connecting parts of the city are being thought of and included. So,
Yeah, other than the sidewalks you're talking about here, obviously, right?
this is at the rail yards.
Oh, down in I beg your
I'm
pardon.
sorry, I think I messed that part up.
I didn't, my mind wasn't fully aware of that, what we're talking about. Okay.
So, but that is about it. With the schools being shut down, we haven't really moved forward being able to identify students, at least not at Hartwick, on for the Green Star or whatever we're going to rename it program.
Yeah, but I have one thing. I think community engagement, I'm not quite sure yet what we're labeling that, but since you're talking about that other process, I want to just commend the community outreach from a number of people, including Dave and my husband and Liz Brown and someone else. I'm not sure who the fourth person was, who went and worked down the creek that goes from the school to Wilbur Park, pulling out the Japanese knotweed.
Oh,
And-
fantastic. There's been some chat about that.
And then a follow-up, they got permission to go up the creek a ways from the school. And then clearly they're gonna have to come back shortly because it's already coming back, but that's what you have to do, is you have to keep pulling and cutting it down. But I thought that was a good thing to do.
No, and that is certainly in the future, Kim. That is certainly something that would go into community engagement. It's not just something that, like Mark Ryer doing, it's not just limited to the
Yeah.
rail yards or anything like that. It's just kind of, I thought it'd be nice to have a report of all the little things that are bigger things that are going on, and just kind of put a big catch-all and do that. But that is fantastic. I remember seeing some email chatter about that a few months ago. So I'm glad that was successful. So thank you.
I didn't do anything.
Well,
I had to pass it on.
pass it on then. You do that. Then.
My rodeo.
Steve did. Your husband did.
Yeah.
Good influence.
Here you go. All right. So that is the committee reports. Moving on to old business. We have beekeeping in Oneonta. I know Gina had sent out something pretty early on. And I think Tracy might have as well. No? Or we had a conversation. Okay, so I think it was just mostly Gina then. Is there any conversations that people want to have on this? Gina, do you want to start us off on that?
Oh, just again, most of the literature out there is positive about beekeeping in cities, large and small. There was one piece out of the UK about competition with wild bees, but that seems less like a comparable case for us. There's plenty to forage. The many places that have navigated the fear problem. So I think that we should consider, again, how people might accept this if we need any kind of process of educating the community before we jump into it. Mark had mentioned it was part of the master plan or some endorsement. So again, something that seems reasonable as long as maybe we consider setbacks, if it's property line issues. Again, might be some rulemaking, I would think, or that the council might want to adopt.
Okay.
Kevin, actually, I did send out some. I forgot about that. I had just looked up to find out what other cities across the U.S. are doing. You know, were they adopting? Has there been a movement to adopt bees? And indeed, just as we saw with chickens, this is a real movement. It's been occurring. Lots of cities have enacted it, and they've all overcome, you know, the issue and the stigma. So it from my perspective, it's something that's fairly normal now for cities. But I agree with Gina. Rules have to be in place. You have to make sure there are setbacks, that there's proper places for bees to be put. They have to have east-facing sun. I mean, there are some things that they need in order to survive. And then you've got to communicate with your community to make sure that there isn't somebody that potentially, if we're stung, could go into anaphylactic shock or something like that. You do have to make that clear. So yes, I did look into that because I've been looking into it for myself.
There are also several elementary schools, so they're having kids do beekeeping. So that's overcoming a whole nother area of fear. The one other concern that I just remembered was that the bees have undergone several crises, health crises, and some of those are related to pesticides, as we know, but also it could be a transmissible disease, again, if they're not kept properly. So there would be some bee health issues. Again, not my area of expertise, but the Tufts piece I sent around had some of that as well.
I mean, I would imagine that that there are also chicken diseases, you know, based on poor. I mean, so is that something? I missed that whole chicken argument from a few years ago. Was that so? I mean, I guess my thing on that is that if that hasn't been regulated for chickens,
The
I don't
only
know
thing
what we're
that,
going to do about bee health in general. If we want to keep that, I agree that putting in rules for setbacks and maybe because of the unique, as far as I know, nobody gets pecked or gets an allergic reaction from a chicken scratch or whatever. I don't know. But we might want to think about some sort of language that you would have to at least notify some number of neighbors within, that you're going to do this.
Mhm.
yeah, I would think anything that comes out, you'd have to have a clause in that says in case there is an epidemic related to bees or chickens, then the license would be revoked. And then, I mean, not because of the individual, but this does not go into perpetuity. The license to do it or whatever, the permission. To my knowledge, there's only one chicken coop in the city. Paul Conroy has license number 1, and I think he's the only one.
Well, then you
But
guys.
I don't think it's a real serious problem. I think Paul is nuts to do it.
There's more than one. There are more than one people with.
Oh, there's really 2 or 3 licenses in the city?
I don't know about licenses. I know that I got 2 neighbors that have got them.
Well, Paul has a license. You better go find out. But I don't think, do you think it's a big issue? I don't think it's a.
Well, there were, again, it was a pandemic and 80% of hives were wiped out in some places. So it was a significant.
Yeah, okay.
But again, that doesn't mean we need rules. We might just need communication.
Yeah, and to me, you can't say it's going on in perpetuity, that it's fine unless, either you break some rule that's dangerous to people, or else if the group itself, the critters themselves are causing trouble. But I don't, no roosters, we know that. No roosters are allowed, which is a good idea.
Okay. Well, okay. So we can start looking at that. I guess we can put together some suggestions to move forward to give to Mark to pass along. Again, I don't think that this is going to be high on the list of the city priorities right now. But I think starting that conversation probably is also not a bad idea. So,
but no,
start
beekeeping.
putting together some idea. Just send me an email with some of these ideas specifically. Then we can put that forward as a memo to not send it out to everybody for approval as well. But then we can just have a few points that we think need to be addressed in whatever that law would look like.
At the moment, bees are not prohibited in the city. Am I correct? There's
Yeah,
nothing stops the person.
Yeah. Oh, I think that they are.
They are.
They are not
They're
supposed to do it.
considered- I think we looked it up. Aren't they considered livestock of some type?
Yes.
It sort of
That's-
sounds weird, but that's the.
That's why this all came forward. I don't think you were there, Dave, when
Maybe not.
that was in the
I
market.
I did not know there was a restriction on it. Okay.
Kevin,
Yes, Gina.
do we have to respond to the petitioner in a formal way?
I do not believe we do, but I think that I might just send him a notice that we had discussed it. Here are some ideas, and if he wants to have further input while we're drafting a set of recommendations to City Council, he's welcome to do so. I think that would be a good thing to do. I can certainly send
He's
out
the expert.
what?
He's the expert at this
He
point.
is the expert at that, so I will be sure to email him that this week.
Great.
And say that we did talk about it. I think the consensus of the board seems to be that with proper rules, so to speak, that we'd be willing to endorse this, and we want to send a positive recommendation to City Council. So I think.
Yeah. I mean, does everybody else feel that way? I mean, I see it as positive all the way around. Bee populations are plummeting. We need pollinators. Bees are not a health. Occasionally they might sting, but honeybees are not really a bee that goes out and intentionally stings somebody. There's a lot of cities across the U.S. are doing it. You can log on to a website called Bee City USA, and it gives a map of like every city that's adopted bees in their cities and links to them. So, I mean, there's clear precedent for doing this, and so I would support it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm all for this. I mean, I was surprised to hear that it wasn't allowed. I think that there's enough communities that have been doing this, and there are so many obvious benefits to this that I'm more than willing to back
Yeah,
this.
I support it also. I mean, the charter says bees in particular, the word bee is in there or just, okay, it is. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I did not read the chart. Okay, no, I
Not
support
the
it
charter,
myself.
code. Yeah, I support it also. I also think that I realize council has a lot of things to do, but maybe they find
Yeah.
it distracting, but timing for things like this is everything. It's like trying to start a garden in the middle of the summer, starting bees. I think you have to get them out in the spring so they have enough honey to survive. So if you miss the season, then it's another year. So, if we can pull something together and move it forward,
So that
it might turn out that it's not that controversial and the council could just deal with it. I don't know. What do you think, Mark? You're going to do any other business in the next 6 months besides budget and pandemic?
Well, hopefully, because I'd certainly like to be distracted with some other more interesting and exciting topics. But the bottom line is, yeah, I'd be happy to bring it forward if you all, I think that the way that you phrased it, Kevin, is good, a set of recommendations. I think then what I'd like to do is bring it to the legislative committee, which I'm not on, and bring it to them and kind of frame what is what is the rationale behind it? What are the recommendations, some of the thinking, and then allow that committee to begin to entertain it, work on it. And if they like and accept it, to begin to move it into the form of a motion. And I'm not sure strategically whether we do motion first or legislative committee second, but I'll figure that one out. And then if the committee felt that was ready to go forward to the council, it would move up to council for council to vote on it. So, I mean, the council does the business of the city. So if a city board is interested in putting forward recommendations that would be legislative change, then that's what takes place. And so I timing wise, I'd say you might as well, sure, why not do it now?
Yeah, sooner the better. Yeah.
Joan, do you agree with all this?
I do. I
Okay.
think it's a great idea.
Okay, and
Yep.
Lucille, if you can hear us, come up mute, tell us. If not,
Lucille, yeah.
I'll send an email to her and double check on that. Okay, well, fantastic. So thank you, Gina. Thank you, Tracy, for putting the work into sending all that stuff out. I will be sure to, like I said, this week, email the petitioner and ask some ideas and what our plans are. And I'm hoping to have just a draft document to show everybody really soon, and then we can just send that off to Mark and let him deal with the legal side of it and
Good.
wash our hands of the pollen, so to speak. Okay, so that is the old business. New business. There was some comment on email about homeowners, particularly cutting down trees on easements or planting things on easements. I don't have an easement, so I do have a new sidewalk, though. It's a very lovely sidewalk. It did eat into my front yard, though. They did take away some of my property for that.
Did they?
Yeah, but that's all right. It was a useless front yard anyways. So I will open that up to other people's discussions. Kim, I know you had some comments, particularly the planting part.
Well, I mean, really, the thing that disturbs me the most, of course, is the cutting down of city trees. And I would just like some clarity first on, I don't even know if they're called easements. As I said, I don't even know if they're called medians. They're not in the middle of anything, but they're in. I searched the code a lot today,
Okay.
not very successfully. And medians are sometimes in the middle of roads, and sometimes I think once it might be between the curb and the sidewalk. But anyway, if everybody knows that that's what we're talking about, because an easement to me, that's a legal term I don't quite understand, but it seems to me that that's in a deed or something. And I'd like to know what the legal status is of that tree belt, that median, because I certainly know, and I say this without rancor at this point, tree had to come down, but we had a huge tree outside our house on the tree belt. And there was no way we were able to stop the city from cutting it down. It was clearly the city's tree on the city's property, as far as we were informed. So is it the city's property, or is it the homeowner's property, which might which either by general law around the city or by deed cedes the access to it to the city. I mean,
My
I'd
understanding,
like to know what these things are, what the rules are on it, and that governs some other things, but partly, in particular, I think it's a question of the trees being cut
maybe,
down.
Dave, in one second, Joan, do you have anything on this? Being probably the
My understanding is that the right of way is city-owned property. I don't know whether the tree on the right of way is owned by the city. I don't know that legality, but it is city-owned property, and the city maintains the right to do whatever they want to do on that right of way.
that was my understanding as well, was that the cities usually own that space between the street, between the sidewalk and the street. The homeowner is supposed to maintain in terms of like mowing it and things like that and keeping it clear. And I know that a lot of places the city is responsible for planting the trees on that, but I don't know if that precludes other people from planting trees. But certainly if it's a city-owned tree, I can't imagine that you'd have the right to cut it down. But that might be something that Mark, you can ask a lawyer or something like that. But Gina and Hutch had something to say.
I looked it up for New York City, which is very detailed in these, and the easement even goes up into people's yards so they can expand sidewalks, for example. Danny Lappin said he was going to take a look at this for us as well.
Okay.
To see what we have in existing code. But the New York City does not preclude people from planting in that space, but they are, you can't cut down a city tree.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the only thing I can add is that for years and years, no one seemed to know where the meeting was. And I think they're deadly afraid to ever get a surveyor in town for fear the surveyor is going to find out that a lot of the meetings owned to the property owners or vice versa. I think it's a water. I don't think you can really come up with a clear, I think by tradition, the city's always said that's the median. And we were told, fine, plant trees, that you do not need permission. However, we had one person, the former Mayor Nader, the older Nader, the 100-year-old Nader, didn't like us to be putting a tree in his front yard. So then the younger Nader suggested we contact all the neighbors and had property adjacent to the thing, and the engineering department blew their, they said, that's impossible, come on, get real. So anyhow, I think, yeah, I mean, the incident, I guess I brought this up is a friend of mine who happens to be an attorney called me and said, I know you know a lot about trees in Oneonta. And I said, well, not that much. I'm a geologist. But anyhow, we got into the discussion, and this fella on Oak Street who was in the at Suco I know when I'm talking about Tracy. I can't pull his name. I don't have his name. It starts with a B.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter at all. He planted 5 oak trees on Oak Street, all by himself, way before we started to plant trees. And remember when we started to plant, the engineering gang said, that's going to be trouble someday, looking at the 5 oak trees that we planted there. Then about a year ago, this fellow proceeded to cut down 2 of the trees, which were on, as we talk, city property, even though we planted them there. That's meaningless that he put them there. They're there, they belong to the city. And then the woman across the street didn't like the idea. So she called engineering, and I don't know what happened after that. And this lawyer friend of mine said, why don't I go talk to him, which I did. And my upshot was that, it would set a horrible precedent. He offered to pay any money to take them down and any money that would be involved in putting smaller trees up. And I kind of, as I was talking with him, it came to me, this is a heck of a precedent to set. You can cut trees if you got money. If you don't have money, you can't cut them. And if I got the money, like George, I'm going to cut them. That's up to me. And I don't think it's a good precedent at all for the city to do. So my comment is just that it's, Greg, I sent an email to him. He didn't have time to respond. This guy, okay, another part of this that he claimed and what the attorney was saying, well, yeah, but the Roto-Rooter guy or somebody like a Roto-Rooter guy came and said, well, you need to get that tree removed in the front. So that was the advice. And he had other trees that hadn't affected drains, but he was doing this as a precautionary.
Yeah.
Saying, well, what about the rights of the city? If the city tree is going into the city property, you've got to take out, you can't let that happen. I said, no, I don't think, so that's where this kind of got going. And took me a long time. I finally got an email out about 10 days later. And did you guys get the email? Maybe I sent it to the environmental board. I can't even remember.
Yep.
But that's about the gist of it. I've not heard back from the city engineer, nor have I heard back from the individual who did this. So that's where it stands. But
Dave, I didn't catch the first part before, maybe when you emailed it. So these trees actually were planted by the citizen who took them out,
that's correct.
which is another interesting
Well-
issue. I guess it does relate a little bit to what I was saying, because I assumed they were city planted trees.
To me, it doesn't
So
make
once
any
you
difference.
plant something in the median, does that then become something that the city can control?
I think so. Isn't that standard? I'm not a lawyer, but
I think the way easements work is that you own the title to that land. You actually own the person that owns the land owns the easement, but the city has the right to do what they will with it. They can regulate its use. I don't know if they can regulate that. Well, they can determine the use of. I don't know if the city can control other things that are being done. Technically, the title of an easement belongs to the person that owns the land. So it does make sense to me that it should be regulated at the city level. And we certainly shouldn't be cutting trees off of it, and we should be going through some procedure to get it done. But there is I don't know, there seems like a gray area in terms of, how does the city regulate an easement?
It would be interesting to maybe Mark or somebody we can find out. Again, getting these things done at this time is probably a hard one to do. But if it is that the property owner owns the easement and that the city maintains the right to do what modifications it needs to do to that, that is different than saying only the city can do something to it, right?
but then where's the
I think
property
Joan
line?
probably knows what a lot of these
Yeah.
deeds say.
My understanding is that a right of way for a street is city-owned property, right? So the city owns, let's say, 60 feet, and the roadway is 40 feet, and then there's 10 feet on either side that includes the median and the sidewalk. And that's called the right of way. And the private property comes up to the property line, and that's owned by the private owner. But the right of way includes the median, the sidewalk, and the paved street, and that's city-owned property. My
Yeah,
opinion.
that's, you would know. I mean, I thought the title belonged to the
So-
property. But yeah, I would say, I don't know. And is an easement different than a right of way?
Yes, yeah.
I think it is.
You were absolutely right about an easement where, the person who owns the property but has given up rights to the property.
Right. Okay.
Gas, water,
that's
sewer,
different.
electric,
Okay.
TV, all that stuff.
Right.
Mhm.
You know,
So
you got to have easements in there.
So yeah,
Right.
so that does seem it does make it difficult. I mean, because I hate to add more paperwork on top of things. or
I don't think it's going to be resolved easily at all.
No.
I'm shooting
Well-
my mouth off, but I think it's sort of like the deer issue. We don't do deer.
Well,
Good reason. It's so complicated. I mean, I don't think this guy's going to follow it with a lawsuit. If he does, then I guess he does. But
no, I'm not particularly interested in this particular case because
no, but that's the precedent-setting case. It would define a lot of stuff. But
right. But what I think might be something useful is to think about: is there a process if somebody wants to add or remove something on this right of way? maybe we can create, maybe there's a process, right, where you have to get permission from the city.
Well, I guess in a driveway, in my understanding, I'm not on the zoning committee, but if someone puts a driveway or parking lot in front of their house, and if the zoning group says you can do it, it's there in perpetuity. It goes with the property. If someone says, oh, I have an uncle that's living with me and can't get around, needs to get his wheelchair out, I'd like to pave a little lot in front of my house so a car can come up there, that's with the property forever. So one has to be very, very careful when what's the term I'm looking for? Not
Variance?
variance, thank you.
Yeah.
A variance to a property owner, it sticks with the property regardless of who owns it down the line. So,
Well, right, but that doesn't mean that this necessarily has to be thought of as a variance, though.
well, I guess if you said you could do it for a year, put flowers in it and come back next year, maybe on a very short time basis, I don't know. It gets awfully complicated. I mean, I don't know, do people feel it's a real issue right now in the city? Little garden plots that are going out there here and there, you know?
Well,
I was not, as I said, I saw some things that I thought were beautiful and are well maintained.
Yeah,
I was a little bit more surprised with the hardscape because I mean, I don't know. I don't know if the plows are going to get caught on them when they go by or not. I don't know what happens when people decide to leave it. I've seen a lot of abandoned perennial gardens in real estate that don't look great after that. But I'm less worried about that than the trees, though. I do think it's good to define what that space is because it really can be used for the good. But I also think you could probably, if it becomes the property owner's will, they could just about do anything with it. If everybody says, hey, that's my property now.
I don't think property owners have the right to do whatever they want. I think that the city has not consistently enforced the right-of-way issue. So where I live on Ravine Parkway, the right-of-way runs right, there's no sidewalk on one side of the street. And so the property line runs right to the pavement line. Not the property line, the grass. So most, right? So most people actually have grass in the right-of-way and it looks like it's their yard. But I know one of my neighbors wanted to put in a fence and he originally put his fence in the city right-of-way and was required to move that fence back to his property line. So I think, Kevin, your idea is a good idea, that there be some sort of process or policy about what private owners can do in the right-of-way.
Yeah.
And I think, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think before I was going to say, because Mark had his hand up as well. But yeah, we can go back and think about what that might look like. So Mark, what were you going to say?
Joan's statement began to change my thinking. I was going to suggest that perhaps you want to get greater clarification and speak to City Attorney Merzig and maybe clarify that. But if it seems pretty clear, I would recommend the same as we just talked about the B situation, is to make a set of recommendations. And again, I can bring that forward to the same exact group, legislative committee, to consider again. And that's where Attorney Merzig would get involved in shaping what particular, what the rule might look like. And we can just bring that forward if that's of interest to this board.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Merzig is the one that said we could put trees in the median, but not in private. He made a distinction between the two. And he said we do not have to get permission in the median. That belongs to the implication being that belongs to the city. You don't have to get permission.
Right. But
that's how he seemed to be fine. No, I think, yeah, we probably should get some clear. There's nothing in the code. Did you see anything in the code in your perusal of the code at all?
Well, I didn't look up right of way.
No.
Right. Okay. So Gina, yes.
This particular case does concern me. And I did do a drive-by of the trees. I'm no expert, but they're big, beautiful, and healthy on a street that needs them and is part of the character. So we have interests that relate to character, the value of shade, biodiversity, and birds. So I would like to see us think about it in the context of it's important not to endorse, allow the cutting of trees.
I
And a
agree.
part of a broader problem is people are cutting trees on private land too, and maybe we think about civic engagement to discourage more tree cutting out of fears of storms and more
Yeah.
responsible tree ownership.
Well, now you're just making me feel bad about the
Sorry.
tree. I had to cut. They were rotted out, and half of it already landed in my neighbor's yard
Yeah.
for one
Well,
tree.
that's good. That's
No, I think that these are, and I like your addition, Gina, of
Yeah, that's very,
of talking about more of the private property. Obviously that would be something that might not necessarily be something that we can get put into a code. Perhaps that'd probably be a little bit harder to pull off. But I do certainly think that maybe what we want to think about as part of our urban forestry, and this might be something, Mark, that we can bring back to our green city or our climate smart cities or something like that, is we might want to have some sort of educational track thing going about trees. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard the phrase roto-rooter and cut down trees. The two seem to go hand in hand, and
yeah.
I do know that tree roots will find their crevices to go into, and they do cause problems. However, I sometimes wonder if the maintenance might not be so much on the cutting down of trees and maybe maintaining your sewer lines
Yeah, well-
a little bit.
Well,
I know that's
I could speak to that. I actually had to do this about 5 years ago. At the tree in the yard, which I would not cut down, we had clay pipes. A lot of the pipes in the city are 100 years old,
Yep.
and the roots went through the clay pipes, and it cost me about $6,000
Right.
to
It's
replace.
pretty common. Mhm.
Yeah, no, I know. Like I said, I mean, there are times where it has to be done. I'm certainly, not. Like I said, trees will find their way, and you're right. We do have an incredibly antiquated piping that are going to cause some problems. But I guess just trying to have a conversation or education that these trees are an important part of our city's identity, a very important part of biodiversity, maintaining a climate smart community. And so maybe the first thing that we ought to think about is there other alternatives than cutting down a tree? Or if we do have to cut down a tree, are there other species that we should think about immediately about planting, planting
So-
there and just trying to do a better job of educating. So my suggestion going forward right now is that I will contact the city lawyer and see how much I can get. I mean, not that I don't trust Joan as she probably knows better than he does even about all of this, but ultimately he is the city lawyer. And so, and I'm going to try to find out exactly, not just where this thing is or even, and just the terminology, but what are kind of the city expectations of what can be done there. And then from there, we might want to start generating ideas about things that we might think might want to trigger a process. Personally, I'm not that concerned about a garden. I know that if something, yes, if they get abandoned, they could be a site problem, but if they become a site problem, the city just goes in and puts some grass down or something like that. It seems easier to deal with a small garden to fix, but you put a tree in there, and you're talking about all sorts of issues, right? That is it an appropriate tree? Is it a tree that's going to cause problems on the wires? Is it going to be a tree that's going to go and break up the roadway? Is this an appropriate? Is the infrastructure, the city infrastructure around there, able to take a tree going in there? Right. I mean, the last thing you want is roots coming up and popping everything up. Yes, Gina.
New York City has an approved tree species list, for example, to get to that very point.
Oh well, there you go.
Yeah, that would, I'd love to see, maybe You shot the other information to us earlier. I don't remember seeing a specific list. That'd be good to have. But willow is prohibited in the city. Apparently, the feeling is that willows will go after sewers. They seem to be
Well,
the worst
that's-
species. I
that's-
don't know of any others, but I believe the city
There
code
are
says
more.
no willows, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I searched trees today and there are at least 4 species, including the silver maple, that are prohibited. And it's pretty clear that the city's going to make you take it out and if you put one in, and I can't remember all the rules, but it's pretty much the city gets to decide about things like that.
Mhm. It's in the code already. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the code.
Okay, so I'll also take a look at that as well. And if you guys want to help me and find those little things and send them my way, I can be more than happy to put them together. And so I think this has been a good conversation here. And so I think we're all kind of in agreement that we'll find out a little bit more about what the city considers their legal rights for that strip of land. And then we'll put together a series of things that we think should be triggering events for permission. And we'll send that over to Mark. And we'll make our
Just one last comment is, of course, the utilities have to go in either above or below. And anytime we put a tree in, we faithfully call Dig New York. And they go through the listing. Are you going to be using a bulldozer? No. Are you going to be using dynamite? Not usually, but kind of go through the line. It gets a little ridiculous. But anyhow, that's one thing the city engineering department's been adamant about. That one must, where the local guy that puts a tree in probably doesn't pay. In fact, the guy that put the oaks in said, "Oh, I don't think that Dig New York was even around when I put those trees in there." I said, "Well, I think it was because it was there when I got involved 20 years ago." But anyhow, that's the utilities jump on board this thing too. And if you put too many restrictions, we ain't gonna have any trees. I'll guarantee you. You can.
Oh, I'm not. Yeah, but I do think that on that city land, that I think there should be some sort of. I think this is a balance, right, between saying
sure.
you can't do anything at all on that land, on that parcel of land, and do whatever the hell you want, right? So I think we want to try to find that balance. Okay, excellent. So the last thing on new business, I had seen an article on these things called Miyawaka forests. I meant to learn more about them before this meeting, but my kitchen renovations ran long, and this morning my washing machine sprang a leak. My second floor washing machine sprang
Them up just because the word was out. I didn't know what it was. It's a Japanese, garden thing, and I'm not so sure it's appropriate for anything in the city, quite frankly.
Okay.
You clear cut something and then put specific trees in. I don't know where we would do that. And I mean, we're really not in the business of having a demonstration plot. Cornell could certainly do it somewhere, but I don't think there's anything. That's just my own opinion.
Well, I was thinking, and that was the thing, is what I wanted to find out more was how big of a plots they're using. So basically, the general idea of the Miyawaka forests are you create a small urban forest with lots of biodiversity. You tend it for a couple of years, and then it sort of, once you get past a threshold, it seems to then move forward. It seemed like an interesting idea in terms of green cities and things like that. But I've also had trouble finding examples of them in, say, New York, where we'd be able to find what would be a good mix of trees and so on. I was just thinking, I just, rather than big fields, maybe there can be more trees.
Mm-hmm.
I love having a lot of big fields, but, and as we talked about a few meetings ago, a lot of our beautiful trees in our parks are aging out. And so we want to start thinking about how do we want these to start to look, right? I mean, a lot of those beautiful sycamores in Neowa Park are, have some time left on them, but it's now is the time to start thinking about what we want to start replacing those with.
We have done nothing with park trees, basically, in terms of the environmental board in the past. We've always stuck to street trees. We kind of, Parks and Recreation has their ball game and they do what they want, but we've not, for no reason other than just we can't do everything, you know what I mean? So maybe another Parks and Rec, I don't know, that's a whole nother ballgame to me, other than street trees. It's an interesting idea, but.
Well, I certainly think that what we can just, well, in that case, then I think what we can do is, I'll try to ask them and say, what our, the environmental board is knows that this is, realizes this has kind of been your purview, and we're not trying to overstep anything, but we're just, we would like to know kind of what sort of plans you have for the trees in the parks, if that's something that the board is interested in.
Yeah,
Years
I think
ago, I had a student that we mapped all the trees and noted the species in the park. So there's a GIS that was built about 10 years ago. So that there is some base data, but in terms of I've not heard of any movement toward upkeep of the trees or what's being planted back. I don't know. And yeah, I think it's something that it's appropriate for the board to be interested in.
Yeah, Mark.
Tracy, do you know if that, I think it was Cornell that did the study maybe 5 years ago. Did that include park trees? Or was that just?
I think it was a
trees?
street tree, because the Horticultural Institute up there in Cornell kind of did street trees. And I believe all they did was street. Then we had that other survey, I can't pull, it really was more of a professional survey. They came in and I thought did a very good job. I can't pull the name out. You know who I'm talking about?
I do remember, yeah.
Yeah, and they were here for 3 or 4 days, but very professional. And I think they have latitude, longitude on many, many trees. It's in the city computer system. That all went into the city. And I've not kept on top of that a lot. But in all the trees we've done, Dick Denicourt located not by latitude, longitude, not GPS stuff, but we do have a fairly good understanding. I bet we know where 80 or 90% of the trees we planted are. Some have died, a few died. We maybe haven't kept track of that. Some we've replaced. So maybe we didn't get the right species in the second time in the data. But we know pretty much mainly street trees though, not parks. So parks is another ballgame. It's maybe fertile soil for the environment.
Well, I mean, obviously, but, again, I would consider this as, Gina wanted to know kind of what we had wanted to do. And thanks again. Thank you, Dave, for putting that all together. That was a great read. But I certainly think that we can, knock on people's doors and ask them and, what's up. And if we don't like their answers, ask them why not, and so on.
Well, Mark added additions to that. Mark had additions, which I forgot to put in, and so did Dick Denicourt. So I'll try to get the other, at least Mark's. I think I sent Dick's out to all of you, but maybe not Mark's yet. Yeah. Well, I just thought it's Gina was asked the question, and I began to think, it's a good question. What have we done? So it's all your fault, Gina.
That was useful. Thank you.
Yes, no, that was good. So, all right. Well, that is all the new business. Before everybody runs, we now have everybody here. So may we do that vote on the minutes from the March 10th meeting, which we would have to redo at our next meeting anyways, as Carrie pointed out, because we did not have, while we had a quorum, we did not have a quorum of yeses. So, so these are regarding to the minutes of March 10th, which I sent out. So do I have, and I'll do it right this time. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I wasn't there, so I better pick them.
So moved.
Trying to think
Okay,
if I
Gina,
was
do we have a second? Does anybody have a second?
second.
Okay, Tracy seconds it. Okay, so all in favor of approving the minutes of March 10th, 2020?
Even if you weren't there, you can approve them, I guess.
Gina, and we've got Joan, and David, no. Okay, and Tracy, you were going to approve? Okay, Tracy.
I was trying to recall if I was at that meeting. I usually.
You were. The only two people that weren't there were Dave and Kim.
Okay,
And
I approve.
I approve them as well. Lucille, Carrie, do you think you can
She's
bring.
unmiked.
Oh, she is. She
I
is now
just
on.
unmuted her. Yeah, we'll see if she.
Lucille.
Lucille. No, there's no response.
Okay, so we'll take that as an abstention then. Any nays? Any abstentions?
I guess I have to abstain.
Yeah,
Because
David.
it messes the pot up. I don't.
Okay, so I voted yes. So we have 4 yeses and 3 abstentions and 0 noes. So the minutes, I believe, now have been approved for March 10th.
Correct.
and-
You have enough to pass it. Just for future reference, you do not have to have had been in attendance at the meeting. Technically, the
No.
ownership of the meeting minutes are that of the clerk. So you are just, and actually, you're not even required to approve them. You just need to indicate if there need to be any changes made.
Ah,
So that is something to consider in the future, that if you simply want to move to a format in which you say, yes, these are accurate, no, they are not, this change needs to be made, that is acceptable. You also, even if you have not attended, you are legally able to approve them. You are not required to abstain, but if you are not comfortable approving them, then you are certainly within your right to abstain.
oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Right.
Well, that could change 20 years of doing it this way.
The one power we had. We don't even. We didn't.
Sorry.
We've been promoting
No.
ourselves.
We had in the good old days, the minutes that we had at the clerk's office, and I can't remember her name, bless her heart. They almost came back verbatim for the whole minute, for the whole meeting. I mean, it was 2 or 3 pages of minutes. I mean, yeah. Anyhow, excuse me, interrupting. Go ahead.
Okay, since we are done with all of our business that is on the agenda, we do not have to put this up for a vote. So that's it. Thank you all for coming through here. It's nice to see all your
Thank you. Good to
faces,
see
even if
everybody, except
on the
Lucille.
computer.
Sorry, Lucille.
I've missed seeing you all, guys. So this is
And the
great.
first ever virtual environmental board meeting.
There you go.
Yeah,
Mark
sorry,
and
I was a
Gina, we
couple
got one
minutes
tomorrow
late.
night, right? Tomorrow night, we've got, no, that's been changed, hasn't it? Mark and Gina, the
Been
one that
changed.
we tomorrow night is,
Next Monday.
okay, that's what it looks like?
Yep, Trish moved it to Monday.
Okay.
All right. Well,
If there's anything I should be doing, Mark, let me know if there's anything I should be doing. I've not been very, good on that.
We're going to get everyone back on track on Monday.
All right.
all right. So I'm going to call this meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Yay.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Keep the masks on, everybody.